Today I'm going to show you how to make a crochet logo kind of motif, and this can be used for a lot of different projects. If you like the San Francisco Giants, check it out, and you can use it for a scarf or put the same pattern in a beanie or a blanket, anything really. So I'm going to show you how to make it now. First, let's talk about the materials you'll need. You'll need a crochet hook. I'm going to use an eye hook, a 5.5 millimeter. You can choose kind of whatever hook you want. If you want your motif to be a little bit smaller, go ahead and choose a smaller hook. It'll make tighter stitches. If you want it to be a little bit looser, a little bit larger, choose a larger hook. But this is what I'm using today. And then I'm using I Love This yarn from Hobby Lobby. This is a weight 4 yarn, so a medium weight acrylic yarn. And I am using orange and black, which is the San Francisco Giants colors. So again, you can choose other colors if you'd like, but to make it kind of true to the San Francisco Giants, I'm going to use these colors. And then you'll want to have your grid or your chart printed out or written out so that you can follow it easily. I find it much easier to follow the grid chart for these rather than trying to follow a written pattern, because you can just, you know, our end result is going to be a picture. So looking at the picture and seeing kind of where you are and what it should be looking like, I find helpful. But you can definitely follow the written pattern as well, and that is on the blog post that is linked in the description. So we're going to start with just our slip knot, and if you have any questions about any of these specific techniques or stitches that I'm doing, you can check out the playlist that I will link in the description for crochet stitches. But this is pretty simple because we're just doing single crochets. So we're starting out with our foundation chain, then doing single crochets, and we'll be doing color changes and carrying our yarn along to create the pattern. So down here I have written 22. That's the number of single crochets across, which means my foundation chain needs to be 23 chains. Chain 23. Now I'm going to turn and work 22 single crochets. So I'm just going to work in the second chain from my hook for my first one. And I like to work in the back like bump of my chain. And so you work wherever you want to work in your chain. It doesn't really matter, just whatever you like the best. But we're going to be doing 22 single crochets. And I started with black because I want my logo itself to be orange. But you can, again, do as you'd like with your color choices. Okay, so now I'm going to turn and do another row of single crochets. So I started at the bottom right, so I worked across. Now I'm going to turn and do the second row that's just all black single crochets. Now when I turn, I personally do not chain one when I'm doing single crochets. A lot of people chain one and then do their first single crochet. I don't do that. I just go straight in and do my single crochet, and I'm going to carry this initial tail along with me so that I don't have to weave it in later. Okay, so now I'm going to turn and I'm going to be working from right to left again. So right to left, then I did left to right. Now I'm right to left again, and now we're going to start with our logo. So I'll get this color change kind of in the middle of the row. So to do this, I'm just going to count the number of stitches that I'm going to have before that logo. So each box is one single crochet. So we have 10 single crochets, and then I'll change colors. Now when you change colors for this, you're going to start your single crochet with the insert hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. And then instead of pulling up another loop and finishing your single crochet with black, we're going to take our orange and pull up a loop to finish that single crochet. And then we'll just continue working in the orange, and we'll work over these tails here so that we don't have to weave them in later, and so that we can keep carrying this black yarn with us to do our color changes later. So now I have 4 orange single crochets. So I'm just going to hold these two tails right next to the stitch where I'm putting, kind of right on top of the stitch where I'm putting my next single crochet, and I'm just going to work over them. And I'm going to do 4 orange single crochets. Okay. And then, oops. So instead of finishing the 4th one, again, we're going to change colors. So now to change colors, we carried this black yarn along with us. So I'm going to drop the orange one and pick up the black and finish my single crochet. Then I can kind of pull the working yarn down just a little bit so that it remains the same consistent tension throughout. And that was these 4. Now I'm going to finish off the black, and so there's 8 black single crochets. So just make sure you're maintaining a good tension in both your yarn that you're working with and the yarn that you're carrying along. And there's the very first row of our actual logo. So now we're going to turn. We worked from right to left. We're going to work from left to right this time. So we're going to do 9 black single crochets, switch and do 2 orange single crochets, and then do 11 black. And so when I make the turn, I again just carry this yarn with me. You are going to see a little bit of the orange poking through as you're carrying along, but to me that's okay. If it really bothers you, I guess you could cut your yarn every time and weave in the ends, but that's going to be super time consuming, and you're still going to have ends that you have to weave in that might, you might not like the look of that anyway. So I just carry it along and don't worry about it. The effect is still there. So again, 9 single crochets black, but on that 9th one, I'm switching to orange to finish it. And then I'm going to do 2 orange. And on this 2nd one, switch to black to finish it. And then do my 11 black single crochets. Again, just making sure that I'm keeping a nice even tension on both my working yarn and my carried yarn. And turn and do the exact same thing for the next row. So we're going to now be working from right to left again. So we start with 11 black, 2 orange, and then 9 black. And you can see that our logo is starting to come together here. And once it's finished, it looks a lot more, I don't know, complete or symmetrical. Like you can kind of see, you see black through there and you see the orange, but once you get the thing finished and it's the whole picture, it's very effective. One thing to note when you're carrying the yarn like this, because you're turning the same direction every time, your yarn ends up getting kind of twisted. So you might just at some point want to take your hook out and untwist, just if it bothers you and you feel like your yarn isn't flowing smoothly and you're not able to keep a good tension, you can do that and just kind of untangle it. And then just put your hook back in and start again. Okay, so we're just going to keep following this same idea up. You're working back and forth and just counting the number of black, which is my open, not filled in, versus orange, which is my filled in on this grid. But again, you can choose whatever colors you want. So the hardest part about this, I personally think, is remembering which direction I'm going. And so if you find that to be a challenge, you could kind of mark with arrows, like, okay, so I know if I'm on the third, any odd row, I'm working from right to left. So I did right to left, left to right, right to left, left to right, right to left, and now I'm on this row right here where I'm starting kind of where the F comes through the S, and I'm going to be working left to right. So I know I do my 5, then my 2, then 2, 2, 4. So just to keep track. Now, again, as you get farther in it, it gets a little bit easier because you can really recognize where you are in the pattern, but just a little hint, if you feel like that's helpful, you can do the arrows just to show you which direction you're working for each row. One thing to note when you're doing just a single stitch of a color, it's going to feel wrong because you're not even really finishing that stitch. But I've tried doing it different ways and it just doesn't look right if you change the way you do it. So still finish that previous stitch with the change of color and then just pull up the loop and switch right back to the other color. The only thing is make sure you don't pull down on this working tail super far and make that like disappear completely. So again, you want to keep a nice even tension without pulling that carrying tail tight. So now that I finished the last row of the actual logo, I am going to go ahead and cut my orange and then just weave in that end as I finish up my last kind of framing rows here of black. So I just decided to do 2 above and 2 below. What you actually do will depend on what project you're putting this into. So, you know, you could put this logo into a beanie, you could put it into a scarf, you could put it into a blanket, clothing items too if you wanted to. Just know you can use this same motif pattern for really any item that you want to use, and then you can alter the size by changing the hook size, like I had said before. If you want your logo to be smaller, go down to a smaller hook size and you'll get a much smaller, tighter logo. Or if you wanted to redo the logo on your own and take some graph paper like an Excel worksheet grid and make your own pattern, you could do that too. And you could make it, you know, maybe instead of 2 for all of these, just do 1 and then shrink it down a little bit shorter to make it proportionally accurate. But I liked kind of the I don't know, beefiness of having it kind of 2 rows for each, or 2 columns for each section of the logo, which is my preference, but you could definitely make your own also. And then I've come to the end of my little frame. So again, I'm just gonna cut off that working yarn, fasten it off, and then weave in my ends. This one I can just trim because I already worked over it and essentially wove it in that way. Now I prefer to weave in my ends, obviously working as I go. I don't really like to weave in ends afterwards, so I do it as I go, but then the final tail I just weave in with a yarn needle because I find it to be much easier and quicker than using my crochet hook. But you can definitely use your crochet hook if that's what you prefer to do. I've kind of looked for a consensus on weaving in ends and if there's an actual right or wrong way to do it, and the answer is no. There's not really a right or wrong way to do it. You just want to make sure that you're securing it so that it's not going to unravel, especially if it's an item that you're going to be washing or you know, in the washing machine, not hand washing, or using a lot that kind of takes a beating. You'll definitely want to make sure that it's weaved back and forth securely a few times so that it doesn't unravel. But in terms of like where to put the yarn, where to weave it in, there's not really a consensus that there's a right or a wrong. Some people have strong opinions on it. And then I like to keep my yarn needle in their packaging because they get lost so easy and I just don't like to have to repurchase. So I keep them in their package. So there you have concept and application for the project. And then you can definitely block this, you know, doing a wet blocking technique where you you spray it or you dip it in water, or you reshape it. If you kind of want to straighten out some of your stitches, you can. That kind of depends what you're going to use it for. You can see my tension. I started a little bit looser and got a little bit tighter as I went, so just be a little bit careful with that. I think that if I blocked it, I could actually address that, but I don't really care. So that's pretty much it. We have our San Francisco Giants logo. So if you're a Giants fan or you know someone who is a Giants fan, this would be a great gift as a scarf. San Francisco's always cold, I'll tell you that. So it'd be a really good gift as like a scarf or a beanie, or even, you know, make it in part of a shirt or a blanket. So if you have any questions or just want to leave a comment below about this video, that'd be awesome, and support my channel. And if you like the video, please like it for me, that'd be super helpful. Thank you so much and enjoy your day.